welcome back to Damnit, Jax. I'm a doctor. I am here with Dr. Natalie Diddams, and she's going to tell me all about how she got her PhD in comedy. Am I right? Basically, broadly speaking.
Yeah, well, the PhD isn't in comedy, although that would be great. It's actually in social research and education. That's the
Oh, well, you're going to have to tell me.
world.
Amazing. You're going to have to tell me all about that. So thank you so much for being here, Natalie.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. But please tell me the title of your PhD, so social research, because I always thought it was in comedy, because that's how we know each other. But so tell me the title of your PhD and where you did it, please.
Okay, so it's called Making Waves. And then it's Making Waves, because we love a colon. Comedy, humor, and laughter as fourth wave feminisms. That's the title of the PhD. So it's comedic and it is about comedy, but it has a social research focus in that I was trying to explore comedy and humor and laughter, like in the context of the contemporary feminist moment at that time, which was the fourth wave. And I did it at Manchester Metropolitan University in their Education and Social Research Institute, which at the time was, and then still is, but at the time especially, was a really amazing institution. Like it was, had some amazing people in it and felt really like an exciting hub for that kind of research. And my background is in theatre, so I did an undergraduate theatre and performance studies degree, and then a master's in directing, and then I was working in theatre for like about 10 years. So it felt weird to move into social research, but that is where I got my funding. So it ended up being kind of an accident, but it was quite a happy accident because it was nice to be, it gave me a whole new perspective, I think, on what I was doing, which was really nice.
Wow. Okay. So did the funding have anything to do with why you chose the university, or was that separate? Did you get the funding separately?
No, it was absolutely how I chose the university, because I was applying to I was starting to think I'd quite like to do a PhD. And then I'd had this idea because I'd been directing a comedy, like an ancient Greek comedy that I'd adapted, and I was trying to look at it through like a contemporary feminist perspective. And so I was doing workshops with women as part of my research process, and I was also for the show, and then I was also working with like women stand-up comedians as well. And I got really interested in this, and I thought, okay, this could be a really good topic for a PhD. So then I was applying, I put together my proposal and I was applying, and I got a few places in different universities in theatre departments, but none of them would give me the funding. And then I randomly, it was just one of those weird, like stars aligned sort of moments. I randomly met my supervisor at like a breakfast meeting, like a weird breakfast reading group that I went to at MMU with some friends of mine that worked there. And it was a very odd thing for me to do because I don't really like mornings, but I kind of went at 7 a.m. to this thing, and there was like pastries and coffee, and I had no reason to be there particularly, but I met this woman called Gabriel who was amazing, and I just was sort of whinging to her about my like proposal, and like I was like, oh, and I just can't get the funding, but I think it would be really interesting. And she just was like, that sounds amazing. And then it turned out that there was a fund, there's like a scholarship within their school, which is called the Vice Chancellor's Fund. And the deadline was that Thursday. So this is the Tuesday. And then on the Thursday, there was the deadline for this fund. And because it was all ready to go, it was like, she was like, quick, email it to me at sort of like, this is now like 8:30 a.m. on the Tuesday. So I did. And then she's an amazing person. This is exactly the kind of person she is. She just got it over the line. She just helped me get it over the
Wow.
line. And then I got an interview, and then I got it. And so that suddenly I was like, oh, right, okay, I'm doing it.
Now I'm doing a PhD. Right.
Yeah.
But that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so congratulations on funding, because that's huge.
Yes.
And it makes it much more accessible, obviously, but like so that's amazing. So I want to go back to the title of your PhD
Yes.
and ask very broadly for everybody else, because obviously, you know, I'm sure I know, but what is fourth wave feminism?
And the fourth wave is considered like, so that was what we were in when I was sort of starting my PhD, but that was is associated with the Me Too movement. And the fourth wave is thought of as to do with technology, really. So it's like the
Oh,
thing that energized the fourth wave was Twitter
okay.
and Facebook, and sort of people having a more like this new way of connecting with each other online. And so the fourth wave can often be thought of as quite an angry movement. um so the third wave is quite joyful, and then the fourth wave is quite angry and quite sad, like it's quite kind of to do with talking about the fact that we thought we'd got ahead and like now we don't, and like actually sexual assault is still happening, and you know other kinds of terrible things are still happening. So that's and sharing that and believing each other, that tends to be what the fourth wave is about. And then the reason, I guess, why I became interested then in comedy is that because it's characterized as quite a sad and angry movement, we like obviously don't look at the ways in which the feminist movement, the contemporary feminist movement, also is quite funny. Comedy is being used,
Yeah.
and more women, and other people that would be considered as like marginalized groups are taking up space in stand up. So stand up has become like this massive thing, like massively popular performance mode, and it's a place where people are really talking about like sexism or homophobia or racism, but they're talking about it through comedy. So I got really interested in that, and about kind of like shining a light on the, the more funny side of fourth wave.
So that's really interesting. So did it start broader, like comedy in general, and then focused into stand up, or did you start with stand up as the I want to look at stand up comedy?
Yeah, it started with stand up. It
Wow,
started with
okay.
stand up mainly because that I just had no, I'd yeah noticed that was a thing. And actually, it's not, stand up is not something that I was ever that interested in. Which again, like as a person, I'm not a big stand up fan, which I think stresses people out and confuses people, because whenever I talk about my research, everyone's like, who's your favorite comedian? And I do love, there are comedians out there that I love and have followed the work of, but I think in a way, I don't know whether you felt that this with your research, but it's more interesting sometimes to look at something that you're not connected to, that you don't. I felt like a bit of an alien in the world of stand up. I'd come from quite a traditional theatre background, so I when I sort of stepped into the world of stand up as a researcher, it kind of felt quite good, because I was like looking at it really fresh.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like I'd almost just suddenly noticed it. I was like, oh yeah, this is a thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
From an academic perspective, you almost need that, right? Because you bring a sense of objectivity. Was there a particular individual that you did notice that made you think, oh, fourth wave feminism and stand up is, sort of coalescing, or was it just you noticed a trend?
So a bit of both. I really liked the work of Bridget Christie,
Okay.
and I
I
went to
love
see
Bridget
some of her
Christie.
too.
Yeah.
She's great, isn't she? Yeah.
She's
And
wild.
I thought she did a series of shows where she was quite specifically talking about feminist issues. There's a book for her, and then a bic for her. There were
Oh
like two
God.
shows of
Yeah.
the no, okay, a bic for her came first, and then a book for her came after. But a bic for her was like the bic, the bic
Yeah,
pen.
I remember this when
Do you
they
remember this
came
show?
out. I remember the show, and I also
Yeah,
remember when they made these pens.
yeah. They were like,
So,
women have to have a special
we
pink
need
pen.
pens.
And so she did a whole like stand-up show about that, which I saw, and I thought, because she was really confronting a lot of the same stuff that was being confronted in other aspects of the movement, but from this other way. So I kind of, I would say that her work kind of got me into it, and I did look, I do, still love her work. And then I yeah, because I was doing research and development on this show, I just was sort of speaking to people, and people kept saying to me, "Oh yeah, like feminist stand up is like a really big thing." And suddenly, yeah, these like ripples of this were coming to me, and I thought, "Oh right, yeah, maybe this is an interesting angle." So I was initially thinking of that as an angle for my show. So the show was, as I say, this ancient Greek play, and it was like called Thesmophryatsuzai. It's about these women who are getting together at a festival, at an ancient Greek festival of fertility, and they are plotting to murder Euripides because they don't like the way that they're being represented in his plays, in his tragedies. And it's like a weird play because it just feels really, it kind of felt really relevant. It's like, how representation matters, and how, because these women are being represented badly in these plays that everyone's watching, then they're being treated badly at home by their husbands, and they're having freedom taken away from them and stuff. So it was like I felt like a weird, like, echo from like 2,500 years ago of like, oh my God, we're still talking about the same things. And here's a play that's dealing with this issue through comedy. But then obviously what would have happened in the original is that it would have been played by men, and it would have been quite misogynistic, and we would have been, probably the audience would have been laughing at the women who were being played by men. So I wanted to create like a piece that was a contemporary female like stand-up comedian, like attacking some of the same themes, but kind of 2,500 years later. That was my idea. So that was like initially where it all came from this show, and then slowly transmogrified into like it could be a PhD project as well.
So it's changed into this PhD project. Did the
Yes.
PhD itself change as you progressed, or did it largely stay the same?
Yes, it did. It did. It became much more about people that I was working with as participants. So, as I'd mentioned, alongside the creating the show, I'd started to just do as a part of my R&D some workshops with women in Bradford, because that was where the show was being performed. And then I just found these workshops to be like amazingly exciting and empowering spaces. And for me, I definitely became quite interested, I suppose, in like gender more broadly, because I noticed when I was in these spaces, I was like absolutely terrified. I'd been definitely brought up to not think that I was funny, to think that in general women aren't funny. And I'd never really questioned that. And then a lot of the work I'd done as a director had been quite serious. When I sort of look back, I realized, I was like, why is now the first time I've approached comedy? Every other thing that I'd done had been quite serious and sad. Like, here's a sad story about something terrible that's happened. And so I kind of got interested in that, and then in these workshops just thinking, oh my God, I'm so out of my comfort zone, I'm absolutely terrified, don't know what I'm doing. And noticing that other participants felt like that, not all of them, but some of them did, and that we were kind of together creating this space where we were like encouraging each other and like egging each other on to have a go at being funny. And then it felt so good when it worked. And so those workshops were really empowering, I felt. And then through the PhD, I went to the Fringe, yes, to sort of watch comedians, but I really became much more interested in these people that I was working with in the workshops, because I kept going with the workshops, and then I was like recording them and interviewing participants and stuff. So it became much more about that, and it became much more about, like, I think less about the fourth wave in the end, even though that stays in the title. I don't know whether I really answered that question. I think the PhD really is about um, how can comedy be used to empower a group such as women, whatever we mean by that, but a group in particular that has been gendered to think that they're not funny, is what I became most interested in. And how can it be used in that way? And then I guess in the conclusion I was like, this is happening in the fourth wave.
Right.
But it wasn't so much about that movement as it was about like what I was learning from working with people.
And were those kind of your research questions? Was like, how can this be used to empower people?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was. One of my research questions was to do with laughter, specifically laughter, like how um, laughter is capable of kind of creating an affective solidarity within a group of people, um, and how comedy is capable of like transforming the lives of individuals. I was really interested in that because in comedy, whether it's on stage or whether you're looking at it in like in terms of stand up or even just in an everyday instance where somebody's just making a joke or laughing with a group of people, you know, what you get in comedy is everything going topsy-turvy and people putting funny like silly ideas together or looking at the world through a totally different lens. And that's, you know, there's loads of different theories about why we laugh, but that comes up a lot. And I sort of this idea of transformation and liberation, you know, and I felt like I'm and still am very interested in how that can then provide a space for almost people to experience something different. You know, like through doing comedy, you can feel different, and then how that can then translate back into your everyday life and maybe change your relationship to, you know, the world around you, like give you to sort of glimpse new possibilities for like how you might live your life and change your thinking on politics and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, it is an incredibly powerful, um, I don't want to say tool, but I guess that is one way of looking at it. But
Yeah.
um, in doing this research, did you have to like break down why things are funny? Did you have to kind of be like, this is, this is how a joke works? Because the argument is always like, oh, if you have to explain it, it's not funny. But I don't know if that's true. And I'm like, did you have to like sort of
Yeah.
dissect
Yeah, a
comedy?
bit. Um, Mainly in the literature review because I was looking at like, well, what are different approaches to this? But I didn't take so there's ways of yeah there's sort of different ways of looking at it, but I could, to be honest, there's like you know, linguistic models of looking at humor. There's like Freud's relief theory, you know, that we're kind of laughing because we repressed emotions or whatever, so it's more of a, like a what's the word, exhaust, like he's like almost thinking about it like a car exhaust or something, you know, like pressure builds
Okay.
up and then steam comes out. I guess. But and then there's also like a social like model of humor that's like about power and status and stuff. So I did definitely like look at all of that in the literature review. But then I chose to work with, and this is really inherited from my supervisor, and because this is a very much a social researchy like theoretical framework, but I was working with like new material feminism, which is much more about affect and um group, like how groups behave when they're together. So I kind of was not interested in why things were funny at all, and like sort of made that case right at the beginning. Like you can look at it, and a lot of stuff to do with comedy is all is preoccupied with why do people laugh, why are things funny, but actually I don't think that, weirdly, that's not, doesn't matter, and that does not really feature in the book, in the thesis at all. And now I'm writing a book which is about how you teach comedy. And the main point that I'm making over and over again in the book is that what is funny is a complete distraction.
And you were approaching, like you said, you're approaching it from a social research perspective. And so was your supervisor like a social researcher? Is that her background?
Yeah, and psychologist actually.
Psychologist. Tell
Yes.
me about your supervisor relationship. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was really lucky. She was great, and absolutely loved working with her. Very knowledgeable, very hands-on, which I think worked quite well for me, because I didn't have an academic background. I did do an undergrad and masters, but my masters was very practical. And then, as I say, I'd sort of worked in theatre, and so I came in and I hadn't got really any knowledge of like how this kind of world worked. I hadn't got any kind of grounding in philosophy or theory. And I do think that my supervisor in the first year was a bit scared
Okay.
of like that. I didn't really know. I think she was a little bit like, what have I done? She was excited to be working with a theatre person, but I think she was also like, can you do this?
Right.
Um, but the thing that was really good about her was that she was really on it. We met every 2 weeks. She did a lot of teaching me, like really in the sessions. We'd sit in the cafe and she'd actually just talk me through a lot of stuff. And then she started like lightly applying pressure through that first year to write something, anything. And then I did. And then she sort of slowly calmed down, I think. She was like, okay, I think, could see that I could write and I could digest some of these ideas. But yeah, she was really, really taught me a lot, and was very, very supportive all the way through.
That's awesome. I think this is like something good to highlight because I also did a practical master's. I don't have an undergrad. And so similarly felt very lost for a long time, actually,
Yeah.
doing my PhD because I just did not have a grounding or understanding of things like methodology. Um,
No, I found that really tricky.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to grasp it and to understand that methodology is just a big word to describe these are the kinds of methods you're using, like, which is
Yeah. What you're doing.
just this
But
is what
yeah.
you're doing, and you just need to find the right word. um,
Mm.
but just it took so long for me to grasp that, and having a supportive supervisor makes all the difference. Do you think? I guess like you found her and it was lucky and the funding was there and it all
Mm.
worked out.
Yeah.
Um, do you have advice for finding a supervisor?
So people do ask this, and I think it's such a difficult one because I just it was just luck. It was just luck for me. I mean, the thing, I had obviously done that work of getting the proposal together
Yeah.
beforehand, and if I hadn't have done that, then it would never have happened. So I had like done the work initially, and then it was just lucky that I met her. But yeah, I know that it can be really, really hard to find a supervisor who's the right fit. And I think that it's such an important relationship because when I think back to the other universities I'd applied to and people that I'd met with, and if they'd given me the funding, I would have done it with them. And it would have been such a different project. And I don't know whether I would have been able to get where I ended up, which was, I was really happy with where I ended up. I might have ended up being a bit like pushed into a different road, pushed down a different road. So I don't know. My only advice would be to just like talk to people as much as you can about your project, and like ideally in person, but yes, over email, and just try to have conversations with people about what you're wanting to do, just to see if you can find, because you just never know, like if that you're like what you might say might trigger in somebody else, and it might be the perfect project for that person, and they might know of some funding, or they might know of a way of making it happen. So
Yeah.
just be talk to people.
Yeah, and this is it. And when you're starting out, you have no idea what's available, and these, people in these positions have a lot better idea. Yeah, I have to agree with that. And knowing yourself, for me, it's knowing yourself. I had to like have a real strong
Yeah.
sense of like I knew I needed someone to keep me to task, right?
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
you know,
And not being afraid to ask for what you need, I think,
that's a hard one.
is a really hard one. I need yeah, quite a lot of positive reinforcement. Being like, I need you to tell me I'm doing a good job.
Please, please don't be mad at me. That's yeah,
Yeah.
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 I can relate to that. Did you have like a secondary or a like, or were they more hands
I did.
off?
Yeah, I did have another one. He was also brilliant, to be honest. And she was quite hands off initially. Because she was like early childhood studies, so it wasn't really relevant. But she was, present in some of the meetings, some of them, and also I think she just knew that my first supervisor was just like amazing. So she was just like, cool, just carry on. And then at the end, in the final year, my second supervisor came into her own because she was really much better than Gabriel was at just structuring a chapter. And she was really, she just gave me really like useful feedback where she was like, why doesn't this paragraph say this, or like maybe move this section here. Like she just was really helpful with that, which Gabriel wasn't so interested in. So between the two of them, it worked out really well.
So good balance for you. That's
Good balance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounded like your favorite, I mean, correct me if this is wrong and tell me if there is something that was your favorite that this isn't. Your favorite thing sounds like it was working with the women in the workshops.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Favorite part of your research.
Yeah.
So to flip that, did you have a least favorite part of your research?
Oh yeah, the methodology.
I hated methodology too.
I hated it, and I really struggled with it. It was so hard, and the thing as well that was so annoying was I did write it, I think in my second year or third year, because I took 4 years in the end. I had funding for 3 years, and then I ended up needing to do a fourth year, which was fine. And I was teaching by then, so I had money like coming in, and I just also did the writing up really that year. But yeah, I feel like in my second or third year, I wrote my methodology and it was wrong. And then I rewrote it and it was wrong. And I rewrote it and it was wrong. And I rewrote it and it was wrong. And it was wrong. And it was wrong. And it was wrong until it was then the last thing I rewrote in my end of my fourth year. I was still blooming writing this thing. And I just was like, I just got to the point where it drove me so mad that I was like, I went back to the original structure. And obviously it was a lot better than it had been when I first wrote it. But I just was like, this is what it is. It is this. It's always been this. And in the end, my supervisor was like, yeah, actually, I think it is that. But we'd gone on this like crazy journey, like with this blooming thing. And it was just because the project itself was so convoluted, because it was, and actually, what I think someone sort of should have given me the feedback of much earlier was that it was too broad. Like I did research at the Edinburgh Fringe, I did research with participants, and I did research on comedy podcasts.
Oh, and so this is all first research. Okay, so that's
all in the thesis. So there's a chapter on the workshops, there's a chapter on the Fringe, and there's a chapter on podcast, the Guilty Feminist podcast specifically. And really, that was too much for a PhD. Like it just was too much to do. And I think it would have been strengthened in some ways by it being less broad and more focused. And also I spent so long doing all this like research gathering that I then had so much data. So the methodology chapter, I guess, was designed to try and grapple with why I was doing all of this, and how I was doing it in all the different spaces, and how the methods were slightly different, but what the thing that brought them all together was. And yeah, so it was a bit of a wild process. But then I also, I hated it all the way through, and I felt like I was going mad. But then I do look back and I think that was such a good learning experience, because I really wrestled with it. And it was cool, because when I went into my Viva, I was like, come for me on it. Because I know why. I really know why it is how it is. And in the Viva, like one of my examiners was like, it's one of the best methodologies I've ever read. She was like, she loved it.
So they didn't come for you.
So, they didn't. They didn't. But if they had,
you were prepared. You were ready. How did it? I mean, so that's great feedback. How did the rest of the Viva go?
It was great. I passed with no corrections.
Oh wow! Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was great. It was really good, and I did feel very like ready for it. I think there was a moment. So the external examiner did have some issues with it. But they were like, I think what was quite good is they were kind of pushing me a little bit on like, well, why? They kind of asking me things like, why haven't you included Hannah Gadsby, and why and which is valid. but I was able to kind of really take ownership of the Viva by they kept asking these questions, and then I kind of ended up being like, look, that isn't what this is about.
Yeah, yeah. Like, is it valid, or like, I mean,
Yeah,
it. I love Hannah Gadsby. I'm a huge fan of
yeah,
Hannah Gadsby. I've seen Hannah
yeah,
Gadsby live. I can go on and on. I've written articles about how Nanette should be considered a film, um,
yes, so
and
good.
because of the level of audience control and the editing and things like that. Um, but
That's cool.
but that's not what you were doing. I
No,
haven't even read your thesis, and I know that's not what you were
yeah, it
doing.
wasn't. I was like, what I was really saying in the thesis was about laughter, um, being the word I was using was minoritarian. So, like, yes, there are these famous comedians out there that are massive, but actually, the kind of laughter I'm interested in is the stuff that's like connecting, women in new formations that haven't existed before. And we're quite used to there's a famous comedian and there's an audience for them. But I was kind of more interested in like, there's all these people listening to a podcast and laughing together across space and time. And then there's these like people that would never have come together in a workshop situation
Yeah.
who are here together and they're laughing together. And what's that doing? And that's what I was interested in. So I had a good moment in the Viva where I was able to sort of reorient like the conversation. And once I'd done that, I felt so in the flow with it. And I was like, I'm just so confident in what I'm talking about. And then, yeah,
Well, I think
I was happy with that.
that sounds like the key to a
Yeah,
good
it is.
Viva, taking control, like
You do.
owning it.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything you wish you knew? Like, you finished it now, you've done your Viva, you are Dr. Diddams, you're done. Is there anything you wish you'd known before you started out?
Mm, good question. There's a few, I mean, I feel like one of the things I'm really glad that I did a lot of when I was doing it was teaching. So I taught all the way through. And there was points where I kind of beat myself up a bit for that because I wasn't concentrating as much as I could have been on the PhD. But, I think knowing that it's going to take the time it's going to take, and actually I needed that extra year. Um, there was a point that, where I was thinking, oh, if I hadn't just done a million different things, then I would have maybe finished on time. But actually, it was better for me to finish a bit later, but have really taken that time, that thinking time you just need.
Yeah.
Like, I think you just need that time. And also having some teaching on my CV was really useful because that's how I then got a job afterwards.
Yeah.
So I think that having confidence in that approach, um, and also just knowing that like it was so hard, but it's such an amazing opportunity to learn. I had no idea like how much I was going to actually learn, and I loved that aspect of it, being able to just encounter like new ideas and really like, and it was hard, but it was such a good time in my life. I miss it, to be honest. I really miss it.
I can relate to that. I know what you mean. I think there's
Great.
I said this in another interview. I think there's an element of being if you're considering doing a PhD, or have done one, or completed one, there's an element of being a perpetual student.
Yeah,
Um, like, there's always like something there. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
mentioned you're writing a book. Um,
Mhm.
what are you up to now? What are you doing?
So I'm an assistant professor at University of Warwick in the theatre department. So it's been quite weird because I've then moved back into theatre after having this like foray into education and social research. So that's been, yeah, an interesting transition then back. And I guess partly now what I'm doing is working out where my research fits in more of a theatre context. And um, I'm kind of hovering around like applied theatre practices a bit, and also philosophical approaches to theatre. because that's where sort of social research seems to sit. So I'm just sort of like learning to navigate the theatre context that I'm in, and I'm teaching undergraduate students. And then, yeah, I'm writing my book, which is due in September. So I'm right at the end of that.
Amazing.
And yeah, getting that first sort of monograph out feels like a really like big moment. And then I guess I'm gonna be thinking next about like what I want to research next, really.
Ooh, the next big thing. It's a good question.
Yeah. And I'm thinking I'm moving away from comedy, but that's
Okay.
another story. But
Okay. Well, are you are you able to say what you're thinking about, or is it top secret at the minute?
Um, but no, it's, I mean, I was so early, but I'm interested in like digital technology and
Mm,
theatre. Because of comedy, I think I'm interested in very much in like the audience performer relationship. So I want to go a bit more into that, and maybe thinking about like how technology is being used to heighten that like audience performer awareness of each other
mm,
and their ability to like talk in a way that is non-traditional with like the actors on the stage and the audience and the audience.
that's pretty
So I'm kind
interesting.
of interested in that. And I feel like that could be a smart move because it feels like there's quite a bit of funding out there for tech.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah.
That's amazing. I have 5 silly questions for you.
Yes, please.
Okay. Barring any cost of availability or ingredients and any potential like allergens or anything like that,
Mhm.
what would your ice cream cone odor be? So you could get it can be from anywhere, it can be anything on it.
Oh God,
Yeah.
that's a great one. Uh, Top of my head, pistachio,
Okay. Pistachio
one
ice
scoop.
cream. 1 scoop
Yeah.
pistachio.
One
Okay.
scoop of. And then coupled with a really, really good chocolate ice cream. Um, but it has to be good. And by good, I mean it's got to be really rich. It's probably got to have chunks of chocolate within it. And it's yeah, that's what I want. I want that. So 2 scoops in a proper cone, like a waffle cone. And I would like to be somewhere like Portugal, please.
Okay. And for any toppings?
Oh, no,
No.
no, just keep it as it is. It's
Nice.
great.
Uh, in Portugal. Hot day.
Yes, please.
Beautiful. You're the first person to give a location,
Yeah.
which I like that. Um, uh, what is your favorite guilty pleasure? Keeping in mind that as someone else has said, and I agree, I don't believe in that it should be
No,
guilty,
no.
but to watch, read, listen to, like, can be anything at all. But what would, yeah, your
Yes.
favorite one?
Guilty pleasure would be Mamma Mia, the musical. I love that. I love it so much, but I do feel a bit embarrassed about how much I love it. Like, I think it's okay to like it because I think it is actually quite a good film. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. I love it so much. I tried to watch it when I was giving birth.
Really?
Yeah, it didn't
Like in
help.
the room?
No, like when you go into labor initially
Yeah.
and then they say like, oh, do things that make you happy and
Okay, so
whatever.
you're watching Mamma Mia going,
So
ah!
I made my husband take me for a croissant, and then was having really like a lot of contractions in the cafe. And then I was like, now I've got to go home because it's in the birth plan. I'm going to watch Mamma Mia. And I was like, no, it's not working. This isn't working. But that's how much I love that film. Yeah.
It was in your birth plan.
Yeah.
That's I that's fantastic. I mean, anything with Meryl Streep, you can't call bad, I think.
Oh, great.
She's
Yeah. So great.
amazing.
And Amanda Seyfried is just fair.
It's full of fit people, to be fair.
Oh, it is. They all are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all are.
Um,
And Pierce Brosnan's terrible at singing, but I don't know, that just adds to the charm.
yeah,
I
like
think
doesn't
he's great.
matter. But yeah, every single cast member fully fit. Um,
Yeah.
what's your go-to karaoke song?
Jolene.
Amazing. Can you hit it? Can you? Is it like
What
good?
now?
No, no, no. When you perform it,
You know,
is this like is it like is it a one drink karaoke thing? Is this a sober karaoke? Are we
I would karaoke sober. I have karaoke sober. But yeah, I think a couple of drinks in, it'd be better.
I don't think anybody wants sober karaoke,
No,
right? We don't nobody wants good karaoke. We want
no, we want
heartfelt karaoke.
yeah. I've got a couple of friends and we go to like one of those like the K box places like semi regularly. I
Where
just
you
love it
where
so
you're on your
much.
own.
Yeah, yeah, in Bali,
Amazing.
like a little room. Yeah. And the last time I met up with them, actually, I was sober, but they'd had a few drinks and I had to like quickly get involved with the alcohol because I was like, come on, I'm holding everyone back here. But
Those are fun. Did it have the terrible stock video?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Amazing. That's the best part for me of karaoke. Um, what hobby that you don't currently do would you love to be able to just pick up and be instantly good at?
Now, that's a great question, isn't it? What would I like to be able to do? Like surfing?
Surfing. So yeah, you just walk out one day and you can surf.
Yeah,
No
I
practice.
cannot be bothered learning to surf. It looks so hard, but it looks like if you could do it, it would be super fun.
That's a great answer. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, also playing piano actually, because again, I can't be bothered to practice,
Don't want to
but
practice.
I do think it's a really good, cool skill to have. Like at Christmas, you can just knock out a Christmas carol, like, and everyone can sing
Right?
along, and that would be really
They
nice.
have those grand
So,
pianos in public sometimes. You want to
yes.
just be
Oh
able
my
to
God, to do
pop
one of those.
down. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, so two things, quite different, but I don't have the staying power with the practice. But yeah, to do it would be great.
I can fully appreciate both of those answers for the same reasons. I don't have the uh, ability to practice. I'd love to be good at both.
Mm.
Yeah. Last question. Uh, if you could go back and study something,
Mm.
what would it be?
Physics.
Physics?
Yes.
Physics? You'd go back and study physics? Why?
Yeah, because it's so
It is
interesting.
so interesting. It's just I was not expecting physics. I wasn't expecting anything in the sciences. That's such a great
Yeah,
answer.
but that's why I think that because you just narrow yourself down so young, don't you?
I mean, we make kids pick it at 16 what they're going to do for
Yeah.
their whole
Well,
lives.
science. I knew I wanted to work in theatre, so I did like English and theatre and French, I think, history at A level, and then obviously theatre. And you just lose all of this. But weirdly, in my PhD, I came back to physics slightly.
What?
I know this is like, I know, um, because one of the theoreticians I use uses some metaphors from quantum physics as her she uses that as her analogy for thinking and for what she's talking about, and so that came into my PhD as an analogy. And so in order to understand the analogy, I had to like read a bit of like stuff around particle physics, like the way of particle duality and Niels Bohr. And I was like, this is so interesting. And if I was allowed to just go back and someone was just to give me time to just do something completely different, I think my brain would just really enjoy being in that
I mean,
world.
that's such a great answer. Have you seen, because this is the first time I truly started to understand quantum physics was we got Quantum Physics for Babies.
Cool.
And it genuinely explains quantum physics. um, but
Okay.
but that's so can you so I don't want to you'd have to get too into it, but like what analogy did you use from quantum physics?
So basically, this is to do with the methodology chapter.
Okay.
So it's Karen Barad, who is a quantum physicist, but what she is interested in, is how she's interested in how the humanities and the sciences are not that far away from each other. And I really agree with this. And I
100%.
hate that they're so polar opposite. And she's like, we can take things from the humanities and put them into like science, and the other way around. But she has this brilliant book called Meeting the Universe Halfway, and she's like, the thing that we have to deal with in physics is that we have an impact on the results of an experiment. So like, I'm, again, massively oversimplifying, but with the wave particle thing, it's like, if we're trying to look for a wave, we find a wave. If we want to find a particle, we find a particle.
Yes,
Deal
the
with
act of
that.
observing something changes the
It
outcome,
changes
right? Yeah.
it actually changes the materiality of it. So she's like, deal with that. That's crazy. And then she's like, then obviously using that in the humanities is very useful, because it helps us to really see that, like, if that happens with the blooming wave particles thing, then of course that's going to happen when we're looking at people. So if what you want to see, if I'm working with a group of participants and what I want is for them to be empowered by comedy, what will happen is
They will be empowered by
they will
comedy.
be empowered by comedy. And when you're interviewing somebody and you want them to say, oh yeah, this changed my life, and that is actually what they will say 9 times out of 10. And so kind of taking responsibility for that and being like,
Yeah.
acknowledging that that's what's happened, and in a way you've created your own monster.
That's so interesting. I don't know if this tracks at all. In my head, this related. Are you familiar with the instant stooge method in magic?
Well, I don't know, tell me.
So instant stooging in magic is when you pull a random audience member up and you just go, do this.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
And then they
yeah.
do it.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They'll just
yeah, they
do
do,
it.
yeah, yeah. It's so weird, isn't it?
And that's
It's so
kind
weird.
of right. And to me, that's kind of it's a similar
Yeah,
thing of like, you want this to happen, so it will happen. Like, it's just, I'd never thought of it
yeah.
as like a quantum physics thing though. But yeah,
So fascinating. And it starts to make me feel a bit dizzy, because I feel like, yeah, well, people are like, obviously people with, people's behavior, and we do change our behavior depending on where we are. So it's not that kind of wild to me that people would behave in the way that I want them to behave in that kind of workshop situation, or, in the way they feel like they should behave. But when it goes down to particles,
yeah,
and I start to feel a bit weird. I start to feel a bit like I might pass out, because I'm just like, what is it that we're living within? Like, what
right,
is it?
right.
Thanks.
Yeah, it starts to get. We're gonna have to stop because we're gonna end up
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
down a rabbit hole, and
Yeah,
we're
like,
both
what
gonna be
is
shaking under a blanket. Yeah.
yeah,
But Natalie, thank you so much. This has been so fascinating.
it's
Um,
been great.
Everybody, this has been Dr. Natalie Diddams on Damnit, Jax, I'm a Doctor. Please join me again to hear about more people's adventures in becoming doctors. Thank you so much. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, do whatever you need to do, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks so much.